This town hall event will focus on the key decisions for the fall semester. A couple of housekeeping notes before we begin. We are using both WebEx events and YouTube. WebEx events is limited to the first 1,000 attendees. And it looks like right now we have 738 attendees, 742 attendees signed in to WebEx, and that number is increasing as I'm visiting with you. Those of you joining us versus WebEx will be able to type questions in the question and answer box. This is different from the chat box. If you cannot see the Q&A box, please hover or click your cursor at the bottom of your screen. You'll see three dots. Click on those three dots and then click on the Q&A and the box should appear. You can begin typing your questions at any time. Live captioning is available on the multimedia viewer. You'll need to click continue to see the captioning. And Sue Goodenkopf is providing ASL interpretation for us today. Sue, thank you very much. Overflow viewing is available on YouTube. You can find the link on the COVID-19 safety page. For those of you watching via YouTube, you won't be able to ask questions live, but please email your questions to covid-19@iastate.edu, and we'll provide answers as soon as possible after the town hall meeting ends. This session is being recorded, and you will be able to watch later on the COVID-19 safety page. And going on to the next slide, I would like to introduce our leadership panel. We have a panel of leaders joining us today to help answer your questions. Jonathan Wickert, Senior Vice President and Provost, Pam Kane, Interim Senior Vice President for Operations and Finance, Aaron Baldwin, Interim Senior Vice President for Student Affairs and Assistant Vice President for Student Health and Wellness, John Lawrence, Vice President for Extension and Outreach and Chair of the Executive Committee for Fall Planning, Anne-Marie Vanderzanden, Associate Provost for Academic Programs and Chair of the Academic Working Group, Michael Newton, Associate Vice President for Public Safety and Chief of Police, Reg Stewart, Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion, Christy Darr, Interim President for University Human Resources, and Kristen Constant, Interim Vice President and Chief Information Officer. My deep thanks to this panel, not only for being here today, but for all the hard work they've carried out during this COVID-19 time to help us gear campus down, but also now as we gear campus back up in preparation for welcoming our students back in the fall. The work they've done has simply been tremendous. I also want to take a moment to thank all of you. I know this has been an incredibly challenging time for all of our faculty and staff as we continue to navigate and adapt to a changing environment and often to unpredictable circumstances. This causes added stress and a certain level of exhaustion. Please know how much I appreciate your contributions, your hard work, and resiliency. And most of all, how much you care for each other and how much you care for our students. I feel very proud of the Iowa State University community. So thank you all. We'll continue to do this work together, and I will always appreciate hearing from you. So let me know how you're feeling, what you need to be able to get the job done in this very challenging environment. Well, let's go on and now talk about some of the key decisions for the fall semester. I want to begin by emphasizing just a few key points from my campus memo that you received on Wednesday. First, the health and safety of our campus community continues to be at the forefront as we transition back to a residential campus and welcome students for the fall semester. We are moving forward in a thoughtful, responsible way with careful planning from our fall planning executive committee and in close collaboration with a dozen working groups and our senior leaders. Just as spring semester was unlike any other, fall semester will be very different yet again. There will be significant changes. The semester will start a week earlier and end before Thanksgiving. Classes will be held on Labor Day. We will offer classes in multiple formats, in person, online, or a hybrid approach, and will reduce the number of students in a classroom at one time. So going on to the next slide, we want you to know that we want you to feel comfortable to do your part to support a successful fall semester. We really are embarking on a new normal, but we can be successful if all of us are doing our part, being creative, innovative, and flexible, and showing care for each other. And showing care for each other means each of us doing our part to reduce the risks of COVID-19. So stay home if you are sick. And we want everyone to feel very supported in that decision. Oftentimes, we all, including myself, think we need to be at work to get the job done. But if you're sick, please stay home and know that you'll be supported in that decision. Wear a face covering when you're in the presence of others. Practice physical distancing. Pitch in to keep your workplace and common areas clean, and keep the lines of communication open with your colleagues, your supervisors, and students so that expectations are clear. We have a communications and marketing group developing a campaign and a theme to communicate these behavior expectations in a clear and consistent way. This will include things like signs, posters, and other materials that your departments and units can use. The campaign will help convey the importance of practicing mitigation strategies, not only on campus, but also off campus, when out shopping, riding Ride. So stay tuned for more details on that as that plan comes together. Our collective caring is also an essential part of our overarching goal to become the best land-grant university in creating a welcoming and inclusive environment that values diversity. I recently sent a campus message on the tragic killing of George Floyd and the depravity of racism and prejudice. I sent a campus message yesterday about a plaque on campus dedicated to William Hornaday, who was a renowned conservationist, but who also set up a racist exhibit at the Bronx Zoo in 1906. His actions and attitudes in response to the exhibit are indefensible. I outlined next steps for establishing a committee to develop a formal renaming policy and procedure. I want to make clear that racist violence is abhorrent, and racism, bigotry, and prejudice are wrong and unacceptable. We must redouble our efforts to uphold our principles of community at Iowa State. Reg Stewart, our Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion, has agreed to co-chair the committee to develop a renaming policy along with Faculty Senate President Carol Faber. Reg, would you please say a few words about this effort?
Thank you, President Winterstein. If everyone who is online could take a quick look at your clock, I want you to pay very close attention to the next 8 minutes and 46 seconds. You'll see how much material we can cover. That's what I want you to imagine, that George Floyd was on the ground with 4 people on top of him, with someone kneeling on his neck. 8 minutes and 46 seconds. It must be said definitively that as a leadership team at Iowa State University, we believe that Black lives matter. And from the very beginning of this pandemic, we brought attention to the disparate impact of Black, Brown, and Indian communities that the pandemic has had. We also underscored the Asiaphobic sentiments that poison the rhetoric. This is the lens in which we approach the diversity, equity, and inclusion work for the fall. What happens across the nation undoubtedly happens here on campus. Last night, I was pleased to participate in the NAACP Community Forum with Chief Newton and Chief Sykosh. We will continue those conversations. We will continue asking the difficult questions. Next Wednesday, we're going to hold a virtual campus conversation for Iowa State employees, particularly white allies, to discuss recommendations on how they can combat anti-Blackness and systemic racism. So with regard to the committee work, since Carol and I haven't had the opportunity to meet yet, we will sit down and we will chart a path forward. But I do look forward to this important work and developing a procedure that allows us thoughtful and consistent approach to reconsidering historic naming decisions. This is important work, and we appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Reg, thank you for those comments. We appreciate your leadership for diversity and inclusion on campus and also within the city of Ames. So thank you very much, Reg. Well, before we begin taking questions, we want to address the three most common issues that have been raised about our fall decisions, and they are face coverings, holding classes on Labor Day, and testing and contact tracing. First, regarding face coverings, we have heard concerns about the university's stance on expecting students, faculty, and staff and visitors to wear cloth face coverings or face shields. The expectation is that students, faculty, and staff and visitors wear face coverings anytime they can't maintain physical distance with others. We expect students and professors to wear face coverings in the classroom. You would not have to wear a face covering if you are working by yourself, but you should be ready to put one on when you come into the presence of someone else. We have heard that faculty and staff want to strengthen this stance to say face coverings are required. We hear your concerns, and we're going to revisit this issue and think about how we would enforce such a requirement. We also have a team that includes our new Dean of Students, Sharon Evans, and others looking into how we enforce this with students. And we will be getting a set of recommendations from this team soon. The university is providing 2 cloth face coverings for students and any faculty and staff who need them. We know that some individuals cannot wear cloth face coverings for health reasons or other circumstances. For example, a faculty member would have a difficult time teaching while wearing a cloth face covering. And in those cases, face shields will be provided. So we're going to talk more about face coverings as we continue our planning for the fall semester. The second topic is holding classes on Labor Day. Our decision to adjust the academic calendar and hold classes on Labor Day was made to provide the best opportunity to successfully complete the fall semester on campus. This new calendar will result in students missing only 4 days of instruction and 1 day that would have been part of finals week. So what this means is that Iowa State will be open on Labor Day this year. That will be a day of instruction, and we will have faculty and staff here to support our students. We recognize there will be many factors at play for those who need to be here on Labor Day. And we recognize that units can approve time off through normal processes for the staff that do not need to be here. And we will be working through a process to provide additional time off for those working on Labor Day. And that information will be released at a later time. So while we're going to be open on Labor Day, we recognize that this is an important holiday and that we will have a way to provide time off to make up for that important holiday that is being missed. And again, more information about that later. The third issue I wanted to briefly discuss is testing. So testing for COVID and contact tracing. Erin Baldwin and her team at the Teelan Student Health Center will continue to work with campus partners on developing a comprehensive plan for COVID testing for students, faculty, and staff. And these efforts will be done in collaboration with our county and state public health partners. And it will include contact tracing to identify others who may have been exposed. Students moving into on-campus housing will be required to be tested for COVID-19. So Erin Baldwin, would you please talk a little bit more about our plans?
I sure will, President Winterstein. Thank you so much. So to start with testing, we had a work group that looked at testing options, and I guess I want to start by saying up front that there are definitely pros and cons to any strategy. I want to say thank you to Dean Grooms and several of his faculty public health experts for helping us to evaluate the options. And we're also really grateful for the work of the Veterinary Diagnostic Lab that is supporting the State Hygienic Lab and will enable us to have access to testing for campus. As President Winterstein shared, all students living on campus housing will be required to test prior to moving into our ISU residence halls and apartments. This is what is called the PCR test, which is the test to detect if you have COVID-19. This testing as part of move-in will be a joint effort between the Teelan Student Health Center, the Department of Residence, and other campus partners. And we anticipate that the test will be gathered by the health center team and then sent to the Veterinary Diagnostic Lab for processing. And at this point in time, we anticipate we'll be using the nasal swab testing method. Following this process will allow us to have a good snapshot of our students and will be especially helpful to identify those that may be asymptomatic but still test positive as we move our students into our campus housing. While we expect the number of those testing positive to be low, it helps us to be proactive and support them with isolation and prevent the spread at the start of the semester. And we do have spaces identified specifically within the Department of Residence for both isolation and quarantine. We will have both the PCR testing, which again detects if you have COVID-19, and the serology test, which is the antibody test, available for students, faculty, and staff. Testing for the overall campus will really focus on any campus member experiencing clinical signs associated with COVID-19, those who have a known exposure to someone who's tested positive for COVID-19, and as a part of our contact tracing. So moving on to contact tracing efforts to this point have been managed by our partners at Story County Public Health. But because we know that Iowa State's impact on the county and our public health operations, we've reached out to them at Public Health and we will be collaborating with them. We have established a thorough plan in which Iowa State will manage the contact tracing for campus, but still be able to provide the necessary data to Story County Public Health and the Iowa Department of Public Health. The majority of the work will be done by case investigators, contact tracers, and resource coordinators recruited from a variety of ISU departments who will contact, counsel, and monitor affected ISU students, faculty, and staff. The ISU contact tracing and case management program will be directed by, but separate from the normal operations of the Teelan Student Health Center. And overall, an effective contact tracing and case management program can ensure that those at risk are rapidly identified and triaged to prevent unnecessary spread of COVID-19 and help us assist with disease management. So we'll be sending out more information to campus so that you'll understand the process and have the information that you need to clearly know how to support contact tracing efforts. We also have a public health team consisting of staff and faculty that will be tying together all of these important components for our public health strategy. As I'm sure everyone can imagine, there's considerable operational details being processed, mapped, and organized. But overall, I really appreciate and encourage the flexibility of our supervisors to support sick employees and our faculty to support sick students. All of us working together as a Cyclone community will help us have a successful fall.
Great. Erin, thank you. And we have a quick follow-up question to your presentation for you. How accurate are the tests, and will there be antibody testing?
Yeah, so we're really fortunate through the Veterinary Diagnostic Lab's partnership with the State Hygienic Lab. We have highly sensitive and accurate tests available, and we'll be able to have those. And as I mentioned, we do have both the PCR testing available, which just tests whether or not you have COVID-19, and we will also have the antibody testing available.
Great. Thank you, Erin. Going on to the next question. How does Iowa State University plan to provide additional support for our Black, Indigenous, people of color, faculty, staff, and students? And Reg, would you want to take that question?
Thank you. Excellent question. The first phase of focusing on our students is actually this summer to take care of the caretakers. So we're spending quite a bit of time looking at the frontline workers, the people who work across our various diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives, and ensuring that they have the level of support necessary as they start to distribute their triage services. So we will use our traditional mechanisms in terms of whether those be small group gatherings, but of course we have to do these things virtually. But the important thing to take away is that the first step is to focus on the caretakers and to ensure that they're in the space to be able to provide the frontline services.
And Reg, there was a second part to the question. How does Iowa State plan to engage white faculty and staff and students in ongoing conversations about whiteness, white fragility, and internalized white supremacy?
Absolutely. Please attend our campus conversation. That is the exact topic of our campus conversation next week.
You know, Reg, I think we're going to have to do that session more than once. I think you're going to have an overflow crowd so a lot of interest in the session that you have planned. So thank you.
We're prepared.
Great. The next question is, the local K through 12 has to have ways to address the social, emotional, behavior, mental health, and basic needs of students as part of their return to learn plans. How is ISU planning to address these concerns of our students? Erin, could I hand that question off to you?
Sure, that's a great question. We realize that everyone has had many challenging experiences related to COVID and all of the different unfortunate situations regarding racism. So we realize there's been a lot of trauma across our campus community with our students, faculty, and staff. So we're really putting together a holistic plan to focus on supporting overall well-being. We have a team working specifically to focus on how we support the mental health of our students. We have several new resources available, including therapy assistance online that will be offered by Student Counseling Services that not only provides online therapy or counseling options, but also a lot of self-help resources. We also have a new app called Cognito that will be available to students, faculty, and staff to support and understand how we can support our peers and students with mental health needs. And then the Student Health and Wellness Unit, as well as all of our partners across campus, we will be engaging different activities to support well-being for our students.
Erin, thank you. And I would just say, Christy, Dar, would you be willing to talk a little bit about efforts in how we support staff in kind of that same place that Erin's been talking about?
Thanks, President Winterstein. In partnership with our folks in Student Affairs, we are continuing to provide new content related to supporting parents through this time of COVID and helping them to take care of their families and create a community. We're also hosting some mindfulness events through our well-being program. Erin mentioned Cognito, and that's a great partnership for mental health support for both our faculty, staff, and students. And then we have some additional proposals that we're still working through to support our faculty and staff for fall. So stay tuned. We have some things that we're working on that we're just not quite ready to share yet. So we look forward to that.
Great. Thank you, Christy. The next question is really about additional or new resources in place to support faculty and staff, and in particular, perhaps resources to help faculty who teach experiential rather than content delivery focused courses. Provost Wickert, would you want to take that question?
Yes, thank you, President Winterstein. Well, we know that supporting faculty in the upcoming fall semester is going to be vital. We conducted a survey of faculty in May, which provided us with a lot of very rich feedback on the experiences and needs of faculty. For the upcoming fall semester, to support faculty as they teach online, blended, face-to-face, and experiential courses. Our Center for Excellence in Learning and Teaching, CELT, will be providing a number of professional development workshops and programming really throughout the summer. Next week, I will be distributing a communication out to all faculty on campus that will contain some information about that programming and links and information on how to register for it.
John, thank you. And then another question. How will Iowa State ensure that tenure stream faculty with high teaching loads can maintain their research agendas throughout the COVID-19 crisis?
Yes, thank you again. Great question. Well, as you recall from the spring semester, we provided clock extensions to any tenure stream faculty who requests one because of disruptions to their research program caused by the pandemic. And really, any tenure stream faculty member who requests an extension for these reasons will be provided one. So that's a recognition, really, by administration as well as faculty committees and departments in the Senate that we do understand the special pressures that tenure stream faculty are under. We have done a number of other actions as well. As you know, we are having mandatory training of all college level promotion and tenure committees. And part of that training actually includes a component on COVID related disruptions. So our committees will be trained up on these issues as well so that they can make good decisions and good recommendations. At the sort of the higher level, the federal level, we know that the Office of Management and Budget has provided some flexibility to faculty researchers in how grants are administered and managed during this time. We've implemented those policies in our campus, and we continue to advocate for that continued federal flexibility as well into the future. And finally, I would just say that we oftentimes provide internal grants through the VPR office for faculty research and for seed funding and the like. And we've provided extensions for faculty on those internal awards.
John, thank you. I think this question might go to Aaron. Will Destination Iowa State be offered this fall?
Yes, I believe Destination Iowa State is in the works, and we're thinking about how that might look different for this year.
It's always an exciting time to welcome the freshmen into Hilton Coliseum. And so we know we have a good team working on that. So I know I'm looking forward to that as well. How will decisions be made on which classes will be online, and when will those decisions be made? Provost Wickard, I think that's a question for you.
Thank you again, President Winterstein. Well, again, we have had an outstanding committee led by Associate Provost Anne-Marie van der Zanden and many others on the Academic Continuity Work Group, which has been in place now for many weeks, looking at these issues for the fall semester. There is no one size fits all approach for how we deliver classes in the fall. So we will be looking at a variety of delivery modes for courses, and we will be asking departments working with associate deans in their colleges to determine the appropriate delivery mode for each class. So in broad strokes, though, I will tell you that our large lecture-based classes will be online, and they will be supplemented by in-person recitation sections or other in-person learning opportunities for students at least once a week. Medium and small lecture-based classes, studios, capstones, and the like will be taught in blended formats using safety measures, of course, for the in-person sessions. Blended instruction, of course, uses a combination of in-person instruction and online instruction. And that combination really promotes safety and flexibility. Laboratory courses will be offered in person with the appropriate safety measures. And that's the general framework. Again, next week, we will be communicating out to faculty and department chairs this information in writing. And then what we will be asking is for departments to be looking through their courses and again, working with the colleges to make these determinations based on the overall institutional parameters and guidance that's set. So the process will really begin next week when this communication goes out.
John, by chance, do you have any information about dead week policies yet, or is that still under development?
So prep week,
Thank you.
a recently renamed week. There will be a prep week, and again, we will be communicating information of prep week out next week as well, and the expectations around that.
What are the plans for dining centers like the Memorial Union and the Hub, since you really can't eat while you're wearing a mask? I'm sure physical distancing comes into this response, but who would like to take that question?
I can take that, President team. So our ISU dining team is doing a great job looking at the different measures that are out there for dining and food service operations. So they're looking at different things such as placements of table and chairs, looking at to-go options, opportunities to serve food versus having buffet style operations. So they're really taking close eye on all of the different guidance that's out there to provide us some different options, because definitely we can't eat with a mask on.
Thank you, Erin. According to coronavirus.iowa.gov, the number of positive cases in Story County has been increasing since businesses reopened at the end of May. Given this, why is the university making such an aggressive push for in-person instruction in the fall? You know, I might just begin with a response that we believe the work of our team is putting together a set of mitigation strategies that allow us to do some in-person instruction. But John Lawrence, would you want to take this question?
Yes, I think the approach is that how do we go about our business of educating, doing research, and serving Iowans while mitigating the risk? We know that we cannot stop all risk, but this combination of testing, contact tracing, wearing face covers, staying home when you're sick, hand washing, enhanced cleaning, all of these things together, we believe will help us reduce the risk and allow our students to come back for an Iowa State experience.
Wonderful. Thanks, John. The next question is, what sources are being consulted for making decisions? For example, recent research indicates face shields are ineffective, especially as the number of cases rise in Iowa and across the country. How are we managing the rapidly changing information and data? Erin, would you want to take that question?
I'm happy to take a stab and would welcome John to chime in too in regards to the Fall Planning Committee. So we're trying to really stay attuned with all of the different sources out there. So the CDC, the Iowa Department of Public Health, taking into consideration the information being shared by our governor and by the Board of Regents, and then really considering that on-campus experience that's so important to Iowa State and our students. So it's really a challenging balance to find oftentimes, but we're really trying to consider all the different resources as we make our decisions.
John, any additional comments there?
Well, I would just add that it's we do follow the research closely, and we have these work teams that have been working on this since spring that we rely on for their information. As I mentioned, there are some reoccurring themes, and there are different articles that come out, but the face covering seems to be one that is shown to be very increasingly effective. The contact tracing is a key part of that. The ongoing testing strategy, staying home if you're sick, all this all together. It can't be any one of those is affected by itself, but all of them together, we believe, provides us a way to mitigate risk.
And John, just a follow-up question along the same line. As things are opening up across the country, the total number of cases are going up. Do you anticipate this impacting current plans for fall? Is the decision to reopen campus going to be changed in light of this new data?
And we'll continue to watch what happens particularly in Iowa and the states where most of our students come from. We have the modeling that we're doing is looking at our student population by zip code and modeling the predicted number of students that may show up here with a positive case. So we are looking in great detail at how we think that impacts us. Yes, there is Arizona, Texas, some of the southern states have had a surge in recent weeks. We'll continue to watch that here in the Midwest as well.
Aaron, I have another question for you. If a student had a prior PCR test from testiowa.com or another state, will the student still be required to take another PCR test at Iowa State?
So yes, they will. We will require our students to test at the time that they're moving into our residence halls. That's the population that we're focusing testing on at this point in time. You know, the challenge with testing can be that you can get tested and that's a snapshot in time. So then you can go out and interact with other people and may become exposed again. So it's really important that we get that test at the point in time that they're moving into the residence hall.
And if an individual tests positive, Aaron, how will that information be released?
So that information will come to either the health center, potentially occupational medicine. We will get that information, and then the contact tracing and follow-up team will take that, reach out and give the results to the person that tests positive, and then we will start the contact tracing and case management process.
Great. I'm continuing to get questions about our stance on students, faculty and staff being expected to wear face coverings, wanting to know as an instructor, can an instructor require students to wear a face covering in the class? And as I said at the start of the program, we have heard this concern about expected versus required, and we're going to be working on some new guidance related to this, and we'll be back in touch on that. So thank you for your continued questions on that particular issue. Next question is for John Lawrence. How will these plans relate to extension and outreach field staff?
So we expect Iowa State employees to follow Iowa State guidance. So the face coverings are expected of our staff is out in the state. We're doing other things. There is a committee on Open for Iowa that is putting guidance, more specific guidance around types of things to do related to educational meetings and forums, looking at the 50% of capacity number, having sign-in sheets that will help facilitate contact tracing and other types of activities.
Will we be made aware of the number of positive tests that are on campus? What will be our mechanism for communicating with campus about results of tests and about contact tracing? Aaron, could you or John take that, or both of you?
Sure. So there's a balance that we want to find, because we want campus to have the information that they need, but we also want to respect the confidentiality and privacy of the people that are impacted. So we likely will plan to distribute information similar to as we've seen the Iowa Department of Public Health find or distribute, so aggregate information. And then, of course, if people were impacted or we discover that they've been impacted through the contact tracing process, then they would be contacted specifically.
Wonderful.
The other thing I would add to that, President Winterstein, is we are talking about a dashboard for senior leadership that would, as Aaron says, talk about not only how many were tested, but how many tested positive, how many are in isolation. So we have a good snapshot day to day on what's happening here on campus.
Great. John, would you talk a little bit about plans for our having the clean environment we want, having access to soap and water and hand sanitizers, The specific question is, will there be hand sanitizers outside or inside of classrooms?
So there has been hand sanitizers ordered here on campus. Many of them are in stock and they're being installed. I learned today that the phase one, and I'm not exactly sure how many that is, will start next week. What I have heard is that they would be more like entry to buildings, entry and exit to buildings more so than each individual classroom. But other high traffic areas, near restrooms, near the entryway into a building, certainly in our residence halls, in places. I've, again, not to start rumors, I talked to SciRide, they're looking at how they put hand sanitizers on buses. So the exact location and logistics is still being worked on, but yes, there is a major effort to have these throughout campus.
The next question is, when are we going to be able to resume travel? So we have been in conversations with the Board of Regents about the travel policy that they have in place, and we might know some more information next week. So we've been asking questions about the current policy, and so we'll be back in touch with information as soon as we know more. The next question is, how will we address the issue of international students not being able to return to campus? And how can we minimize extra course fees for students needing to move online to hybrid courses when they are both on and off campus? Provost Wickert, would you take those questions?
Yes, thank you, President Winterstein. And I'm going to actually hand it off to my colleague, Dr. van der Zanden, who is also on the call. Dr. van der Zanden has done great work on developing what we call the international student bundle. So, Henry, would you please describe that?
Certainly. One of the things that we've been working on for a while now, when we realized that there would be difficulties of particularly our incoming international students being able to obtain a visa and return to the U.S. and come to the U.S., we developed an international bundle of courses situated around 4 different tracks based on where most of our international students register. And they'll be able to take these courses while they're in their home country. We have also added a learning community component to that because we know that our learning communities at Iowa State are an incredibly important part of creating that sense of community and belongingness that our students really benefit from. So our intention is that we are able to help these students make progress towards their degree. And then when they're able to come to the U.S., hopefully in January, they'll be able to begin right away into their second semester of academic courses here at Iowa State. So it's been a strong collaboration amongst the colleges with our admissions team. We have held a series of webinars over the last week to let these students know about this opportunity. And I can say, I don't know what the current number is, but before we even held the first webinar, we had almost 10 students who were already signed up and ready to take these courses from their home country.
The second part of that question was about online delivery fees. Provost Wickert, did you want to go back to that one or any?
Yes, thank you. So we are looking very carefully at the issue of online delivery fees and fees in general for the fall semester. I think, as everyone knows, we had to make adjustments to the fee structure for the second half of the spring semester. And we also made adjustments to the fee structure here over the summer, both for mandatory fees as well as for delivery fees for online courses over the summer. So it continues to be an area of investigation and analysis. We have no policy changes to announce, but it is certainly one of the factors we're looking at in the fall planning.
We have a question related to the composition of the fall planning executive committee and why we didn't include faculty with who were social or behavioral scientists or ethicists. These experts would likely have valuable contributions to make in the planning process. We appreciate this comment and recommendation. We've really reached out to other groups of faculty that aren't on the fall planning executive committee in different ways over these weeks, and we're going to continue to do this. We thank you for this comment, and we will follow up in terms of how we reach out and talk to our faculty that bring great expertise to this situation. With the change to the academic calendar for fall, are there any plans for commencement at this time? Provost Wickert, would you want to address that?
Yes, President Winterstein. What I can tell everyone is that we understand and realize that planning for fall commencement is an important issue. We've received many inquiries on this, both from faculty and staff and students on campus, as well as parents and community members. And of course, it's just natural. Everybody wants to know what is the plan for the fall commencement, because of course, in the springtime, we had to make a rapid pivot to the virtual commencement ceremony. What I can tell you is we have a team actively looking at the issue of fall commencement and the various pros and cons of different approaches. With the semester ending early, of course, students will go home at Thanksgiving time. And so we're looking at multiple options. Those options could range anything from have an in-person commencement to have a virtual commencement, and even not to have a winter commencement, but instead have a single commencement in the springtime, which actually is the approach that many universities take. So I can tell you those options are being worked, and it is a known priority for the planning team.
Provost Wickert, I have another question for you. Please address the faculty's responsibility in truncating course material this fall and still meeting the required 2,720 minutes of engagement per credit hour.
Great, thank you, President Winterstein. So of course, here at Iowa State University, we follow all federal regulations and all guidelines and policies established by the Department of Education. Our semester is traditionally actually 16 weeks, the instruction plus the finals period. For this semester, of course, we're removing that 1 week of instruction, 5 days of instruction, but we're adding 1 day back with Labor Day, which really reduces the semester only by that 4 days. However, we still meet the federal requirements, the full federal requirements for the amount of instruction. This is important not just for our educational programs, but also for things like eligibility for federal student financial aid. So we're fully in compliant of all of that. In addition, in developing the alternative fall calendar, we also checked in with our accrediting bodies, such as the Higher Learning Commission and others, to make sure we're compliant with that. So this is an approach that we're taking. Some other universities are taking it as well, as you know, University of Northern Iowa as well. But we are in compliance with the various requirements.
Great. Anne-Marie, here's a question for you. With the need to maintain social distancing, both in the classroom and during travel between classes, will the schedule of classes need to be altered? And if so, when and how will students' class schedules be adjusted?
You know, I would say that this, in our current planning process, is probably the most complicated piece that we're trying to address right now. It is a combination of the student schedule, it's a combination of the timing of the classes, and then certainly where those classes are going to be held. We've got a great group of people that are working on it. We have a fantastic team in facilities planning and management. Knowing that something was going to be coming, they've already done some of this initial modeling, trying to determine what these different options might be in the classrooms. With the change to the semester length itself, this will require a lot of work with our partners in the registrar's office to be able to rework these student schedules and be able to get the last day to drop, the last day to withdraw, all of those type of updates into the system as well. I will say that our overarching goal in looking at the class scheduling was to keep the class scheduling intact as much as possible. We'll need to, you know, start a little earlier and end a little bit later, but overall trying to keep that sequence in place as much as possible. We know we've got a lot of work to do on this. This all ties in with the delivery modes and all of that, and we've got a group that's working on it we're hoping to make some really good progress in the next few weeks, and then certainly be working with the departments and colleges as we finalize that.
The next question is about my comment that individuals who are sick should stay at home, and that is going to be the university's policy, that if you're sick, stay at home, and all supervisors will understand that that really is the university policy. The question, though, also ties into those. What if I need to stay home because I'm at high risk? Christy, would you want to take that question? Christy Dar?
Thanks, President Winterstein.
And Christy, I'm going to ask you to speak up because
Okay.
I'm still hearing you.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks. So earlier, University Human Resources sent out emails to both supervisors as well as employees, helping them to learn about the university's high-risk process. For those of you that may meet the definition for yourself or someone in your family or residence that might also be high risk, that definition is outlined by the CDC and helps us to understand who may be at higher risk for contracting COVID-19. So we have a process that we're encouraging employees to go through if they feel like they might need a modified work arrangement to help make sure that we're addressing their health needs and those in their family and supporting the work being done as well as them staying safe. If you have questions about that, encourage you to email covidhrsupport@iastate.edu. We appreciate the team of individuals. It's cross-functional from the graduate college, from the provost office, and University Human Resources working together to address those requests and support those staff, faculty and staff with questions.
Thank you, Christy. Erin, how long will it take to get the results from the student test? And where will they be while we wait to get their test results?
Well, now that we've decided that classes are starting on August 17th, we're working to map out all of these processes. That's conversations that we're having with the Veterinary Diagnostic Lab. We're hoping to have quick turnaround time with testing so that we could have rotating groups of students that could come in and get tested and then go do some business while we run their test results, result them, and then notify them as quickly as possible. So then potentially they could move in later that day. So I don't have the exact time frames. We don't have the exact time frames mapped out yet, but we're trying to make it a process that will be easy for students and also for our staff.
Provost Wicker, given the adjustment in the fall start and end dates, are there conversations about adjusting the spring start and end dates?
Thank you, President Winterstein. Honestly, we're working super hard on the fall right now. But as the question points out, it's never too early to start thinking about the spring semester. The plan we're developing for the fall is one that I feel very good about, and the team working on it, I feel very proud about the decisions that are being made and the issues that we're looking at. The reality, of course, is no matter how much we plan for the beginning of the fall semester, there are going to be unknowns that come up between now and the start of classes. And, honestly, once the semester gets started, we're going to learn a lot that first day of class and that first week of class. And, we're probably going to have to adjust our plan as we go through. So I believe it's premature to, in this very fluid and dynamic environment, I think it's probably premature to start putting too many stakes in the ground about what the spring semester will look like. But it's something that we are, in the back of our mind thinking about. I think one aspect of the alternative schedule that we have developed is it does give us a little bit more flexibility over the winter break period and even thinking about the spring semester. So are there shorter term classes, for instance, that we might want to offer over the winter break period? If there is a second wave, do we move up or move back that spring semester start time? I think the other factor is we're going to learn a lot. Once we get into the spring semester, we're going to learn a lot, and that's going to inform our decisions. Sorry, once we get into the fall, it'll inform our decisions about about the spring semester. So great question. Probably too early to be doing a lot on that.
Chief Newton, how are we coordinating with the city and with campus town businesses to help keep our students safe and following mitigation strategies like physical distancing? Could you give us an update on that work?
Yeah, so we've continuously had meetings throughout this entire time since March. We've been meeting with city leaders, county leaders, talking through. Really, they're following our lead on a lot of items, as you would expect. And so we are pushing really hard to be consistent. And the city is working on some educational campaigns and putting out more material in the near future that will be consistent with what we're putting out.
Chief, thank you. Well, we have only 5 minutes left, and I think we have like at least an hour's worth of questions that we can't get to here. I'm trying to look at parsing out some of the ones that we've already answered. Erin, back to you and John, a little bit more about what are we thinking about in terms of testing for faculty and staff? There's been some explanation about that, but a little bit more would probably help the crowd.
Yeah, so I think we continue to know more and more about testing and what might be available. Some of the challenge with testing, honestly, has been the lack of supplies. So there's very limited amount of swabs and testing supplies. So that has put some limitations on plans that we'd like to do about testing. So we really decided to focus, first of all, on our incoming students that will be living with the Department of Residence. But hopefully as that supply chain opens up a little bit more, we'll know more. And then as we work into fall too, we want to be able to have both the PCR and the antibody testing available to students, faculty, and staff when they need it.
Great. Erin, if a student is tested positive and need to go into quarantine, what will happen? How will that be taken care of?
So our students that live with us in on-campus housing, we have space identified where they can go and processes established of how we will support them. There's some more work to be done there too. For our students that live off campus, that will be a lot of the case management that I referenced. So this will be our staff providing education to them about what we need them to do in terms of isolating or quarantining, and then regular follow-up with them so that we make sure that they are being compliant.
Provost Wickard, why didn't we make the decision to just stay online and not do any resident instruction this year?
Thank you, President Winterstein. A core fundamental question, and I think it was a set of principles that really came to guide our decisions here for the fall. We surveyed students after the spring semester, and a very uniform piece of feedback from students is that they understood why we went online. They understood the need for it. They deeply appreciated the adjustments that faculty made, and they understood that the university did its very best under the remarkable, unprecedented circumstances. But then the students said, "But I can't wait to be back on campus. I can't wait to be in the classroom with a faculty member. I miss being with my students," and that residential learning experience, the conversations that take place with a faculty member before class or in the hallway after class are so meaningful. So we made the decision that we wanted to prioritize the learning experience, in particular of freshmen, and that we wanted to prioritize experiential learning, which is really the hallmark of Iowa State University. And that is our brand, and that is what we deliver. And it's going to be challenging, but we feel that by appropriately blending online and in person and making the many adjustments that we're talking about here, we can do our very best to deliver that Iowa State experience in this remarkable time period.
Wonderful. Well said, Provost Wickard, and a great place to end our conversation for today. I want to thank all of you who joined us. We were up over 900 participants, I think. And I don't know how many joined in other ways, but really appreciate your continued engagement with us to bring your concerns to the forefront and to work with us to find the right path forward for our community, our faculty, staff, and students. I want you all to be aware of the resources that are available related to COVID-19, related to university human resources, ISU well-being, diversity, equity, and inclusion. We will be working on all the questions that came in today so that we can get them up and answered. Thanks for joining us. Have a good weekend. Find time to be with your family and friends. Take care. Enjoy the beautiful weather.